In 1964, Beatlemania took the world by storm. A concert ticket set you back $3.90. In 2023, the Eras Tour by Taylor Swift drew many comparisons to the Beatles, yet her average ticket costs a staggering $1,088.56. Accounting for inflation, that Beatles ticket would cost $9.90 in today's dollars. That's still over a 10,000% increase in the cost of a concert ticket. So what gives? There's lots to blame. Some say it's the artist's greed, others say it's Ticketmaster's fault for charging absurd fees. Yet in all of this, somehow everyone seems to ignore the biggest culprit: Spotify. If you use the app, you might want to think twice before you renew your subscription, as you might be directly contributing to the death of music. Streaming services have completely changed the way we listen to music. It's easier than ever to discover new songs and hear a wide variety of genres, all while paying a fraction of what we used to. That's great, but it's becoming clear that this business model doesn't work, and we are on the verge of the next musical revolution, with the listeners being the losers. To understand just how badly music has declined, you need to hop in a time machine and remember what music was really like before the internet took over. Pre-digital age, generally speaking, music was more personal. Your limited collection of cassettes or CDs helped express who you were or who you were trying to be. Your relationship with an artist grew deeper, not only with each album you bought, but over time by replaying them.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
Sure, it's easy to be overly nostalgic, but some critics argue that Spotify, despite being marketed as a better way to discover music, has ironically resulted in a significantly worse experience. Like any other all-you-can-eat digital buffets, Spotify offers virtually unlimited choice and no commitment, which has led to music that often feels disposable. At no additional cost to find a new song, and an algorithm that constantly pushes you to keep listening to new music, it's weakening the relationship you have with a single artist. How often do you listen to albums start to finish anymore? Instead, the focus has shifted to vibes, primarily through playlists, which often feels like the equivalent of taking similar scenes from movies and then combining them to make a new movie. The result? A movie that has a repetitive theme, yet no point. Spotify continues to encourage this kind of musical ADHD, even so far as having their artists partake in their TikTok-esque short-form video feeds. This is only the tip of the iceberg for Spotify's problems, but first, let's talk about the artist. Deep down, we all know Spotify's price is a little too good to be true. While digital piracy certainly caused pressure on the industry to make music cheaper and more readily available, services like iTunes with their dollar per song model, in hindsight, seem to be a pretty fair solution for all parties. When compared, Spotify's emergence into the music market relied on removing users' ownership and centered on a business model of not fairly paying music artists. If calculated, artists get somewhere around 0.004 cents per stream.
Is that good?
On paper, you might not think that's all that bad. A-list artists have billions of streams, and you'll often see articles about them earning tens of millions from Spotify. In reality, it's not that simple. Music rights are very complex, with many parties taking large chunks of that income, so ultimately, for many artists, the actual take-home pay is nowhere near that figure.
In the streaming world, I can show you right now. They just sent me some from Spotify where I got 1 billion streams, right? My publisher hit me. I said, break that down, how much money is that? That shit wasn't even $45,000.
That's crazy.
In response to this abysmal pay, a growing number of mainstream artists like Justin Bieber and Bob Dylan have sold off their share of their song catalogs to investment firms. It's hard to blame them, especially as you get older, because it takes years for that streaming income to amount to anything worthwhile. These investment firms offer an easier alternative by giving decades worth of that expected income up front, yet it comes with some serious unintended consequences. Take it from Taylor Swift. Despite now being a billionaire and also having the most expensive concert tickets, she's also been one of the most outspoken against streaming services from the start. She even took her music off of Spotify in 2014. It's a shame Taylor's protest ended in 2017, as just a few years later, she personally experienced what can happen when ownership of music rights falls into the wrong hands. In her case, the label that owned the rights to her master recordings were purchased by mega manager Scooter Braun, who had a history of bullying her. Because Scooter only owned the master recording, Taylor was able to fight back by re-recording her old music, thus creating a new copyright. This became known as Taylor's version. While the re-recording spared Taylor, typically artists sell their share of their publishing rights, in which case re-recording wouldn't solve anything.
You were the guy who said to Michael Jackson, you should get into publishing.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Don't you love the irony?
And he bought all your songs.
Yeah.
And you've said to him, listen, I'll give you fair market value. Let me buy my songs. I want to own them. And he won't do it.
For those artists that have sold their rights, you can expect in the future that they will have zero control over how their music is played and distributed. Their music would be commercialized in ways they would never approve of, like having Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit being the new Fortnite theme song, or Beyonce's Single Ladies being used in a Viagra commercial.
I have.
Genital herpes.
Despite Taylor recognizing some of the issues Spotify was bringing to the music industry, she was able to protest given her extreme popularity. Small artists don't have that luxury. One of the most common ways users justify Spotify's bad business is that although the artist doesn't make much on the platform, the exposure they get is worth it. They can point to tons of examples of small artists like Lil Nas X going viral partially because their music was on a platform that required few barriers to listen to. That's true, but exposure is really only great when you're starting off. It doesn't pay the bills. Pre-internet, you could be a one-hit wonder like The Knack and make tens of millions before you even got on stage. The reason concerts used to be so much cheaper is because artists toured to promote their album sales, as that's where all the money was. Today, it's the complete opposite. Musicians of all sizes now make their entire living on the road, causing the extreme concert ticket costs. It's also extremely exhausting, and for non-A-listers, often it's not even all that profitable. If only Spotify stopped here at killing the artist, but sadly, it's much worse than that. Spotify is ruining the creativity of music. You've probably heard complaints that many new trending songs all kind of sound the same. In the era of Spotify, this is not only true, but actually intentional. Artists of all genres are now crafting their music to fit a specific formula dictated by Spotify's algorithms. Now, when structuring a new song, virtually all artists must ensure that two crucial considerations are met. To count as a stream, a song has to be played for at least 30 seconds, and if it's played in its entirety, the algorithm will be more likely to recommend it. That alone has changed music forever. To ensure their song is not skipped, choruses are appearing earlier and more frequently, while the song duration is getting shorter and is less likely to take creative risk. Artists will also fill their albums with a lot more songs, all in the hopes that that will equate to securing more spots on playlists. Ironically, while playlists are a main attraction to Spotify, it's also their biggest flaw. One of the biggest issues is that major music labels are essentially bribing the algorithm by utilizing Spotify's own promotion tools. The core of Spotify's recommendation algorithm is based on collaborative filtering, which is really just a fancy term for pattern recognition. Once paid promotions are added to the mix, these patterns start to lose any kind of fairness. Consider two hypothetical groups of Spotify listeners, Group A and Group B, both identified as rap music enthusiasts by Spotify's data. Using previous feedback from similar users, Spotify filters their millions of tracks down to a list of popular rap songs they might suggest to Group A. From this list, users in Group A receive unique recommendations that are tailored to their own tastes. However, they are all presented with the same promoted song, God's Plan, by the artist Drake. Despite users in Group A having somewhat varied preferences, the majority of Group A listens to and enjoys the promoted Drake song. But watch what happens with Group B, despite not being exposed to any paid promotions. Because Drake's song was previously promoted, Spotify collected an overwhelming amount of data on that one song, mostly with positive feedback from the users in Group A. This will now cause Spotify to likely place God's Plan and other Drake songs on its filtered list of potential tracks they would recommend to other rap enthusiasts. Users in Group B still get their own unique recommendations, but they're being recommended songs from a list that has been artificially biased towards Drake and other similar artists. Seriously, this promotion feedback loop happens all the time, perhaps most obvious when Drake's Scorpion album was released in 2018. His face was inescapable, and the songs were in playlists that didn't even make sense, like Best of British.
What? You're Canadian, you're Jewish, and you're half, it's just like mind-blowing things to them.
Although Spotify's terms of service does not allow direct payment for music to be placed on playlists, their promotional tools are designed to do that anyways. Small artists with no budget for promotion and significantly less streams simply do not have as much data for Spotify to find patterns with, resulting in them being drowned out by the ones that do. This is a big reason why artists from the big three music labels continue to dominate popular playlists like New Music Friday, Rap Caviar, and Pop Rising. It's not like these big artists are producing better music than the little guys. It's all a game of data points, and it's been abused through artificial popularity bias.
No, I worked too hard. I worked way too friggin' hard for this.
A lot of people work really, really hard for their dreams, but it's not meant for everybody.
That's why you use auto-tune and I don't.
Actually,
it really seems like Spotify wants the little guy to fail. Beyond offering promotion tools that objectively skews the fairness of recommendations, they also have Discovery Mode, a pay-for-play model where artists can boost their chances of being recommended only if they agree to give up an additional 30% of their Spotify income. This puts small artists in a no-win situation. They can't afford to lose any more of their already terrible streaming revenue that they depend on, yet they also can't afford to opt out of the Discovery Mode program as they risk being overshadowed by those who do participate. As a final FU to the small artists, they even implemented a recent rule change that songs now must achieve 1,000 plays within 12 months before any royalties are paid, diverting an estimated $40 million from small artists to big ones.
Hey, Bart. Ouch.
While playlists being dominated by big artists is pretty annoying and unfair, you might have noticed another phenomenon occurring. Playlists are also becoming increasingly driven by moods and activities rather than focusing on a particular artist. Whether it's high BPM tunes for workouts or mellow tracks for cooking, Spotify seems to have conveniently organized songs for every scenario. That's pretty great, right? Well, it could have been until Spotify executives realized there were 400,000 user-generated barbecue playlists. So what do? They picked up the phone and started calling barbecue companies.
Look, they want you to come to a barbecue. Just hear them out.
Journalist Liz Pelly authored Big Moon Machine, an article about how Spotify pursues emotional surveillance and manipulation for profit. Liz argues that Spotify's push to these playlists is deceptive, as the real reason to define audiences by their moods was part of a strategic push to grow Spotify's advertising business in the years leading up to its IPO. Spotify is really just an ad company in disguise. In fact, Spotify's founders never even worked in the music industry before founding the company in 2006. They both came from advertising technology. Since acquiring the music data firm Econest in 2014, Spotify has utilized its data tools to analyze the context in which listening was occurring. By 2016, they began sharing their mood-based data with leading marketing firms as they proved just how easy it is to influence listeners with emotionally targeted ads. In Spotify Ad Studio, brands can target any mood or activity from commute to girls' night out. Their extensive research on users' habits are proudly marketed by the motto, "You are what you stream." Their case studies suggest that companies can masterfully exploit Spotify's data to craft extremely targeted ads. For example, Coca-Cola, promoting their Open Happiness campaign, could utilize Spotify's data to identify users in a bad mood and gradually expose them to more uplifting music. When these users' moods improved, Coke ads would be presented, linking positive feelings with their products. Sounds crazy, but this strategy is so effective that Coca-Cola has since launched their own music label, creating original songs trained on your data, all just to get you buying more soda. Maybe the real question we should be asking ourselves is, what has Spotify actually accomplished? Yes, it did help make music cheaper and probably suggested some music you ended up really enjoying, but did we ever consider the true cost? Their advertising strategy caused many to now treat music as a consumable mood enhancer. Artists were robbed of their income, which caused live performances to cost 10,000 times more, all while a few major labels took even more control over the industry. Somehow, despite all this, Spotify has never turned an annual profit. Something is bound to change. Currently, the platform's main cost is compensating artists for billions of streams, and its profitability will always be challenged by Apple Music, which has far more resources at their disposal. Spotify can only operate for so long without breaking a profit, yet Apple Music doesn't ever have to, as its true purpose is to encourage user loyalty to the greater Apple ecosystem. Spotify does have one last trick up its sleeve though. They can embrace a whole new era of music. The rise of AI in music production is starting to suggest a future where paying artists might become obsolete. With AI-generated tracks already being mistaken for the real thing, and artists selling the rights to investment firms, it's not far-fetched to think that some will sell their vocal likeness as well. This is the next music revolution, and it's happening way sooner than you think. In time, as artificial intelligence begins to produce music that is indiscernible from their human counterparts, Spotify's financial concerns will quickly disappear. No longer will they need to pay artists at all. Their users have conveniently been conditioned to treat music as background noise, to pay little attention to a single artist, and convinced that music discovery is a burden that requires immense technological intervention.
I mean, of all the things I should be able to do myself. Right? How pathetic is that?
Perhaps now is the time to take back control from our algorithmic overlords. For some, that may be by joining the vinyl revival or returning to way of piracy. If you choose to remain on Spotify, remember that you don't own your music, so at the very least, you should be fighting to own control of what you listen to. Now, and especially in the future, artists both big and small will genuinely need your support. Remember, an author's work is meant to be read cover to cover, yet collectively, with our music today, we often fall victim to the urge to skip between chapters. Step outside your comfort zone. Commit to letting an artist tell their entire story, and you might be surprised what you discover on your own. Otherwise, if you keep listening to a bunch of ones and zeros, eventually you'll become one yourself. Sometimes, to make real progress, you have to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back.